One of the things that has led to the fatherlessness in Britain is the fact that there are some men who want to have children, but they don't want to become fathers. They don't want to be fathers. Good afternoon. My name is Kasim, and for the last year, I've been looking into the social and psychological reasons that lead to fatherlessness, deadbeat dads, and absent fathers. And I've been trying to understand why it is that women do not abandon their children and don't leave their children, whilst it seems that there is a large minority cohort of men and fathers who do. And I've been trying to figure this out. So, in order to try to figure out one of the things around why it is that some fathers abandon their children, the first thing that I had to come to terms with is that men are not the same. So if you look at me and you look at every man in Britain, not every man, because there's always exceptions, but the vast majority of men in Britain, if you look at our physiology, we're pretty much the same. We've got penises, we've got a nose, we've got feet, we've got hair. We typically are much taller than the average woman. There are, of course, women who are taller, and there are men who are shorter than women. But on average, most of us, we're going to be taller than women. Many of us are going to have broad shoulders. We're going to have higher levels of testosterone than women are going to. Whereas women are going to have higher levels of estrogen and so on, so on. But if you look at our physiology, we're the same in most cases. Here's where the difference is. We're not the same in terms of our values, our attitude, how educated we are, how knowledgeable we are, what we want in life, what our vision is, what we're struggling with, what our strengths are, and what our weaknesses are. We're not the same. And so one of the things that I really had to grapple with and really understand in trying to understand fatherlessness is that I had to understand men in terms of their views about children, about whether they want children or they don't want children, about how much time they want to be involved when it comes to the children, how they discipline children, why they're having children is not the same for men. And what I began to realize is that the standard that part of the reason why women do not abandon their children is because the standard that we have for mothers is pretty much the same across the board, which is partly why women don't abandon their children. And this is reinforced by every single system that exists, such as social workers, such as the family system, such as the education system, the healthcare system. At every single level, it is reinforced and constantly pushed that there is a certain expectation, which is that the mother and the child need to be together. To the point where if you look at the legal system, a mother who commits a crime but has children will get less time because they want to keep her with the child. Whereas if the father did the same thing, they would remove the child from the father, right? We know this. Now, there may be various reasons, etc., but the point is, if a mother does the same thing, neglects their child, they're going to get a lot more support than a father is, because the standard that we have for mothers when it comes to their children is pretty much the same across the board, which is that one of the things is that we're very forgiving, and we also support the mother when they break away or they're struggling with their children. Here's what I began to realize: we don't have the same standard for fathers. There are some women who genuinely believe that they can perfectly raise a child and the child can have a great quality of life without the father being in their life. We don't hold that standard for mothers. The vast majority of British society does not believe that a child can go on to live a remarkable and incredible and spectacular life if the mother is not in their life. But we do not have that same standard across the board for fathers. So already now that's one chip which breaks away, because you've got a divide now. If there are women who don't think that the father needs to be in, then they can make that to be in the child's life. They can make that decision and get away with it. And they're not going to be punished, and systems are not going to reinforce it. Hence why we have a law where a man cannot be seeing his children, but we will still collect child maintenance charge, childcare fees from the father, right? Whereas we don't do the same. I think it's something like 8% of women pay child maintenance, which just goes to show you that means the system in some way is skewed towards that. So the first thing I had to really grapple with is men are not the same. And how I learned this is that I learned this. I don't know whether you know this, but I'm a sperm donor for a number of lesbian couples. So I met some lesbian couples who wanted children. And I am a bisexual man, and I very quickly realized that there is a potentiality that I might end up with a man. I might not have children, and I was trying to figure out. But I wanted children, and I was trying to figure out how can I have children if I'm not going to be with a woman, if I end up with a man. And I found that there are women who are lesbians who also are in the same predicament and they want children. And my friend Annie said to me, why don't you hook up with one of them? They want a child, you want a child, you can co-parent and have children together. Now, you have to understand, I didn't know about any of this. I was brought up in an Islamic family, so all I knew was that to have a child, you need a mother and a father. That is it. I didn't understand about adoption. I didn't understand about surrogacy. I didn't understand about fostering. I did not realize that there are different types of family. I just thought there's one type of family and there's only one way to have a child, and that is it. And there's only one way for a child to prosper and come into the world. And when I was in that, I had to do a lot of research before I came to that decision to basically offer these women my sperm in a cup so that they can then insert it in themselves and become pregnant. We didn't have sex. I did a lot of research, and I ended up speaking to a lot of men who were sperm donors. And the vast majority of these sperm donors did not want to be in the children's lives. And this was very shocking for me because I'd never come across men who wanted children but did not want to be in the children's lives. And then on top of this, the vast majority of women who were looking to become for men for sperm and who were looking to become pregnant, the vast majority of them did not want the men to be in the children's lives. And I was very shocked by this because I was like, as a mother, wouldn't you want the father to be in the child's life? You get to raise the child together, you got double money, you got double the love. But I discovered this was not true. And this, again, this was very shocking for me because I was like, oh, I thought every single mother and every single father both equally believe that a child can prosper and have a great life if it's got both parents in their life, and that a child needs both parents. But I discovered this is not the philosophy of many women. There are many women who genuinely believe that they can raise a child as a single parent and the child will have as an equal, incredible life as if they had it with two parents. And there are also men who are more than happy to father a child and they don't want to be in the child's life. And they also believe exactly the same thing that the women believe. So I was like, oh, this is really interesting. So what I went on to discover is that there are men who are perfectly happy to father thousands of children, but they don't want to be in the children's lives. They don't want to be in the children. They don't want to be fathers. They don't want to connect with the child. They don't want to engage with the child emotionally. They don't want to financially be responsible for the child. They just want to create a legacy. And of course, this then led me to down loads of paths. But what I began to realize is, oh, this is the reason why women are constantly being told to marry a man before they have a child with them. Because in order to marry a man, one of the things that you typically are going to have to do is you're going to have to talk about their history. You're going to look at their family. You're going to look at their values. You're going to look at their discipline. You're going to look at, do they even want a child? Do they want to be in the child? Because when you look at a lot of fathers who end up not being in the child's life, many times it's because the woman wanted the child more than the father wanted to be. The father was happy to have a child, but was not as equally driven to become a father, which is why you end up seeing that the mothers end up doing the emotional baggage. They end up doing every single thing in the house, not because they want to, but because they are the ones who basically wanted that path. And this is how I discovered that there are some men who basically just want their wife. They want the woman. They don't want to have the child. And in order to, and I was like, what do you mean? Why would you just, I thought the whole point of dating and being with somebody is so that you can have children. And I discovered there are some people who just want the relationship. That is it. They just want to be with somebody, travel, see the world. They want to build businesses and then take 10% of the money and give it to charity. They are perfectly happy being uncles and seeing, or aunties and seeing their children, looking after children for a few hours or a day, and then they want to give them back. They don't actually want the full responsibility of raising a child and looking after it every single day, and the money and the cost and the lack of freedom. I didn't know any of this kind of stuff. And a lot of this stuff I learned from women. And then obviously when I then started looking at men, I was like, oh, there's a whole bunch of men who don't want children. They don't mind bringing children into the world because they want a legacy, but they really want the marriage. They just want the relationship. They just basically want to get laid, and they want the closeness, and they want somebody. A lot of men, which I talk about it in the chapter, what they're really looking for is they're looking for a mother in their wife, because when they were growing up, they didn't have the emotional intimacy and connection and affirmation from their mother, because their mother was raising them as a single mother, and so she couldn't show up for them the way that they needed her to show up. So they then replicate that dynamic in their partner, which is where many women end up taking on the emotional baggage of their spouses. I don't know if all of this is making sense to you. And so I wanted to share this with you and just basically highlight that if you're trying to understand what is going on, why is it that some fathers abandon their children so much in Britain? Part of it, obviously, is a massive reason, there's multiple reasons, but a huge amount of it is that there are some men who are perfectly happy to have a child, but they don't want to be in the child's life. They don't want to raise it. They don't see themselves as that role. And there are mothers who are perfectly happy to bring a child into the world as well and raise a child by themselves without the father. And so when you get two people who are like that, do you see how this then slowly by slowly, it all adds up over time? I hope that helps. I don't know if that answers anything for you.